It began without warning. News headlines blared. Canada shuts border to Alaska. Alaska highway closed. Thousands stranded. At the Beaver Creek border crossing, confusion reigned. Concrete barriers and stern-faced Mounties blocked the legendary highway. Vehicles stretched for miles, drivers stepping out, anxious and frustrated, with no answers from officials. The only explanation? The border is closed by order of the federal government. Families on vacation found themselves trapped, supplies dwindling, hope fading. Truck drivers, vital to Alaska's supply chain, sat idle as their cargo spoiled in the sun. Cell phones buzzed with desperate calls, but information was scarce. This wasn't a natural disaster. It was a deliberate act. A gate slammed shut between allies. In Tok, Alaska, gas stations and motels overflowed with people suddenly stranded. Tourists faced expensive ferries or last-minute flights, the sense of isolation growing sharper. The Alaska Highway, once a symbol of connection, was now a severed lifeline. Social media exploded with rumors. Was it a security threat? A health crisis? But the truth emerged. This was a calculated political move. Canada had cut off the land route to Alaska, turning the state into a virtual island. The world watched in shock as the Great Northern Freeze-Out began, the longest undefended border now blocked by a very real wall. The closure was no accident. It was a strategic decision from Ottawa. Canadian Premier Dana Chure addressed the nation, citing unfair U.S. tariffs crippling Canadian industries. The Alaska Highway was closed to all non-essential U.S. traffic, a show of force to pressure the U.S. back to negotiations. Chure's government, frustrated by one-sided trade wars, decided to leverage geography as a political weapon. The highway's closure created an immediate crisis for the U.S., but Canada calculated it was necessary. Operation Maple Shield had been planned for weeks, with resources quietly mobilized for the inevitable backlash. The move was as much about domestic politics as international relations. Chure needed to appear strong. The world was stunned. For decades, the US and Canada symbolized peace and open trade. Now that symbol was shattered. The closure sent a clear message. The special relationship was on ice. Diplomats scrambled to assess the fallout. If these two allies could fracture, what did it mean for global alliances? The line drawn in the north was more than a border. It was a crack in the post-war world order. The political standoff had immediate, devastating effects on ordinary people. The Miller family from Ohio, on a long-awaited RV trip, found themselves stranded, vacation funds draining away. Their children's excitement turned to confusion and fear. Maria Sanchez, a trucker hauling fresh produce to Anchorage, watched her cargo spoil and her livelihood threatened. Truckers shared stories of frustration, their jobs collateral damage in a political fight. In Alaska, towns like Haines saw tourism vanish overnight. John Peterson's fishing charter business lost its entire summer season. Hotels, restaurants, and shops along the highway faced economic ruin. Alaskans felt a new, menacing isolation. Many, like Sarah in Fairbanks, lost their only affordable route to family in the lower 48. The closure severed connections, leaving people cut off from loved ones and opportunity. These stories, repeated thousands of times, revealed the true human cost of the Great Northern Freeze-Out. The highway's closure wasn't just a political maneuver, it was a personal disaster for countless families. The ripple effects spread far beyond the border, touching lives in ways politicians never anticipated. For many, the dream of Alaska became a nightmare of uncertainty. The border crisis was no longer abstract. It was heartbreak, loss, and fear. The human toll was impossible to ignore. The Alaska Highway, or ALCAN, is more than pavement. It's a symbol of alliance. Built in Wubwatu by the US and Canada, it was a lifeline forged in crisis, a testament to cooperation. For over 80 years, it's been Alaska's primary land link to North America, vital for goods, supplies, and modern life. Its closure forced Alaska to rely on costly air and sea transport, threatening economic stability and sending prices soaring. The Alcan is also a cultural icon, a rite of passage for travelers, a symbol of freedom and adventure. Closing it severed not just economic ties, but the spirit of the North. Canada's decision turned a symbol of unity into a tool of conflict. The image of Mounties blocking a road built by both nations was a jarring betrayal of shared history. The act marked a turning point, transforming a lifeline into a wound. The pain ran deeper than economics. It was a blow to the very idea of partnership. The highway's closure was a wound that would not heal quickly. The freeze-out was the climax of years of trade disputes. The main irritants softwood lumber and maple syrup. The U.S. accused Canada of subsidizing lumber, leading to cycles of tariffs and appeals. In 2025, new U.S. tariffs hit Canadian lumber hard, devastating communities dependent on forestry. Canada's complaints went unheard, frustration mounting. Maple syrup became another battleground, with the U.S. targeting Canada's supply management and Quebec's prized industry. The combination of lumber tariffs and syrup threats created a political storm for Premier Chur. Under pressure, she retaliated by closing the Alaska Highway, weaponizing geography. The move linked free passage for Americans to free trade for Canadians. The roots of the conflict were deep, sticky, and nationalistic. The economic fallout was immediate and severe. Alaska's supply chain buckled, supermarket shelves emptied, prices soared, and rationing began. Construction halted as materials were stranded in Canada, leaving workers jobless. Tourism collapsed, with hotels and restaurants losing their summer business. The port of Anchorage was overwhelmed as shipments rerouted by sea, causing delays and higher costs. The pain spread south. Washington trucking companies went idle, drivers furloughed, and businesses faced bankruptcy. The Port of Seattle struggled to meet demand for barge services to Alaska. The crisis exposed a critical vulnerability in the U.S. supply chain. Canada also suffered. Towns along the highway lost vital revenue from American travelers. Gas stations and motels faced a summer of empty rooms. The closure hurt both nations, proving that economic pain is never one-sided. The gamble came at a steep price for all involved. The integrated economies of North America were more fragile than anyone realized. The media shaped public perception, often fueling the conflict. In the U.S., conservative outlets echoed Trump's outrage, framing Canada as an aggressor and calling for retaliation. Liberal media blamed Trump's tariffs, but still highlighted the human drama, feeding national grievance. Dramatic images of blocked highways and empty shelves dominated the news cycle. In Canada, media rallied behind Premier Chur, portraying her as a defender against American bullying. Stories of struggling lumber mills and syrup producers built public support for the closure. The media in both countries created echo chambers, reinforcing national narratives. Americans saw an unjustified attack. Canadians saw righteous self-defense. The polarization made diplomacy harder, as each side saw itself as the hero. Every statement was amplified, hardening positions. The media turned a complex dispute into a simple story of good versus evil. The closure of the Alaska Highway sent a chilling global message. It showed how quickly alliances can fracture under economic nationalism. If the US and Canada could fall out, what hope was there for others? The crisis introduced the weaponization of geography, using location as leverage without military force. Other nations watched, considering their own choke points and trade routes. The stability of global trade was suddenly in question. Even if the highway reopened, trust was shattered. The U.S. would now see its northern border as a vulnerability, investing in costly alternatives. The Great Northern Freeze-out was a lesson even close friends can be divided by politics and trade wars. As the world watched, the question remained: could these neighbors find their way back? Or was this the start of a new, colder era of division?